One of the things that I often get asked about, particularly by first-year students, indeed one asked me yesterday, is how we go about working out a marking scheme for a particular piece of work. In other words, how we award grades. There are many criteria that we use when we put together a marking scheme, some of which relate to the work itself, but others relate to issues surrounding the work. For example, things like presentation, things like grammar, spelling, and also correctly using whatever referencing system, say the Harvard referencing system. But underlying all of these, I personally base my marking schemes on this, which is drawn from Bloom's Taxonomy. Essentially what this is it looks at different levels of understanding, different levels of ability, depending on exactly how you want to describe it, different levels of capability that is demonstrated within the work by the student concerned. And you can see it starts off at the bottom with knowledge and goes all the way up to the top with synthesis. So to run through each of them, the first one, knowledge, is very simple. It's being able to recall or remember information. And the second one is understanding, being able to construct meaning through the interpretation of that information. In other words, you read something and you demonstrate that you're understanding it by describing it and putting some form of written work together that shows that. And then the third one is analysis, breaking down information into its constituent parts and determining how those parts relate to each other and an overall structure or purpose. Essentially, this is what we mean by discussion. These first three, very much you would expect a student to have accomplished by the time that they leave secondary school and complete their A-levels. But then we start getting into what really makes universities distinct and different from schools. And that is where we start looking at things like evaluation and synthesis. So the next one up the scale is evaluation, making judgments based upon standards and criteria. Essentially what we're saying here is critical evaluation or analysis of whatever it is you're looking at. So if you're carrying out a literature review, a critical analysis of that literature. And this really is, as I say, where universities do start to differ. And if you want that all-important 2-1 grade, then this is certainly something that we will be looking for when we mark your word, is this critical evaluation or critical analysis. I'm not going to go into it here because it's beyond the scope of this particular video, but there is a lot of material out there about critical evaluation, critical analysis. So certainly, if you are looking to get a 2-1 or higher, this is a skill that you need to learn and that you should be looking for information on this and in order to develop your own skills. After evaluation, we start looking at synthesis, which is where you pull together all the elements that you've looked at to form a coherent structure, a coherent functional whole, and then you start developing something that is new, a new structure, a new pattern. So essentially what we're talking about here is developing a new theory, developing a new conceptual framework, coming up with something new, some new knowledge based upon the analysis, the critical analysis that you've done. And as I say, it's those last two at the top of this pyramid, the synthesis and evaluation, which really does make the difference and demonstrate the difference between university and school doing A-levels. And that is where the marks are awarded, 2-1 or a first. Below that, obviously, you still get a mark. If you demonstrate understanding, you'll get a third. And if you can, discuss and analyse a particular piece of text, then you will get a 2-2. But let's face it, most students these days are after a 2-1 or a first. So that's really what we're looking for: critical evaluation and the ability to synthesise, bring together information, and suggest or predict new information, new models, new theories, and so on and so forth. Thank you very much. There's the reference that I referred to in that presentation.